Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started here. If I can get your attention, please.
I
feel like I can't walk around with this. So I'm really excited to see you guys here. Thank you so much for coming. And what's even more exciting is that I know a lot of you. So thank you for coming. And you probably know a lot about the plan already, but that's okay. So this is my first public update since becoming the coordinator of the 10-year plan back in October 2016. And so I look forward to being able to provide this update on a regular basis. And I know it seems like we have a lot of panelists here. I kept getting a lot of, well, that's 12 people, that's a lot. But really want to show kind of the partnership and what we're doing with the 10-year plan. So thank you, panelists, for being here. Once again, my name is Theresa Williams. I'm the coordinator of Reaching Home, which is Missoula's 10-year plan to end homelessness. And so I want to introduce Commissioner Curtis and Mayor Ingen. And before they come up here, I really want to thank them for being instrumental in kicking off this plan back in 2012 and recognizing that, in order to create long-term sustainable change, we do need a long-term plan. And I think there was a lot of skepticism at first of a 10-year plan, how are we going to end homelessness? So really grateful for these two in the work group and United Way and everyone else involved. So without further ado, because we have not a lot of time to cover what's happened in the last year, I'm going to turn it over to who wants to go first? Commissioner Curtis.
don't think I've had a mic like this. Thanks, Theresa. So good afternoon. Wow, I was looking this way when everybody snuck in. It's great to see a great turnout. Thanks for coming to learn more about where we've been and where we're headed. When the city and county started this journey, we were dedicated to being successful in making a difference. And I think that if you look at what's happened across the country, it does take the leadership of the elected officials to be involved in it. You can't just sit on the sidelines. So I was glad to be part of. How many years did we meet, Susan? 2? Yeah, I think 2 until we got the plan written. But it was important work, so I was glad to be part of it. So we learned from the many communities across the country that had started this journey ahead of us. Sometimes in Montana, we were bound and determined that we have the best way to do things and we don't need to learn anything from anybody else. But in this case, we knew we had to learn from somebody else, and we did. We also worked to help the community understand that our stereotypical picture of who homeless people were in our community was wrong. That the majority of the folks who are in homeless situations are not what we would normally picture as what we often refer to the folks that used to camp on the courthouse lawn until we fenced them out. That was a joke, sorry. The fence will come down in the spring. We're really trying to let the grass and the trees take hold before we open it back up. We look forward to, one of the other things that we did was we looked further upstream. It's that whole thing of where are all these things coming from? You got to look where they're coming from, and figured out ways to prevent homelessness, which is a great step. So we also recognize that emergency shelter in our community is necessary for the short term, but it doesn't solve the problem. And so as we've said since we adopted this plan, housing is the solution. But we're really fortunate now to have the staff that's dedicated to focus on that solution rather than all of us just doing a little bit what we could when we had time in our regular work. So we're glad to have Theresa and Aaron and lots of people in place that this is their focus, and they will remind us when it's our turn to do our little piece. So thanks.
I don't know where to stand. Actually, it is awkward. Somebody gets a bad view, and I'm sorry. and depending on your perspective, it could be on your side. I want to thank in particular Commissioner Curtis. This really is about leadership and showing up and being intentional. And Intentionality is what this plan is all about. So when we sat in this room 6 years ago and had a broad discussion with the community about homelessness, we had set an intention. And that intention was that homelessness is not an intractable problem in our community. Homelessness is a solvable problem in our community. And the way we solve that is by providing homes. So how do we do that? Well, the dozen or so people behind me, staff, represent dozens, hundreds more who work together in our community every day, following intentions, paying attention to planning, paying attention to one another, and keeping goals in mind. And fundamentally, when you think about a 10-year plan to end homelessness, you think, are we going to be done in 10 years? It doesn't matter. It does not matter. What matters is that we have a goal of ending homelessness. And provided we chase that goal, we will achieve it. This is about a community working together, and when Missoula works together, we get remarkable things done. What you'll hear today is about the remarkable things that have happened in the course of 1 year in solving an intractable problem in a pretty marvelous place. What you'll hear is that when we're intentional, when we work together, we accomplish things. What you'll hear is compassion combined with resources, power, and a little bit of love. You get stuff done. So thank you all for being here. Thanks for all the folks who work every day to ensure that our 10-year plan actually ends homelessness.
Thank you.
So leading in what Mayor Engen had said, get stuff done, that was exactly our mantra when we kicked off this last year, and what are we going to do? And it was get stuff done. So I'll be talking about that. I have 15 minutes, and Aaron's going to cut me off, right? Okay. So this is going to be high-level highlights. I can't get into exactly what the system looks like, so to keep it very high level. So just wanted to warn you about that. So just to kind of orient everyone, so the 10-year plan is in 3 different phases. So the first phase, 2012 to 2014, and then the bolded phase, where we're in right now, is building a coordinated entry system to end homelessness. So that's kind of where we're at. And then in 2019, making adjustments to ensure sustainability. So just want to be clear, we're in phase 2. And so some of our highlights. So most of you might know that we, every January, do what's called the point in time count, and we're actually gearing up to do that this week. This week is a really busy week for a lot of the providers in this room. We're gearing up for the homeless point in time count, which is, it coincides with other communities across the country, and it really helps kind of get a snapshot of what homelessness looks like at a single point in time. And so ours is this Thursday night, and so we'll be working with a lot of providers to go out there and to survey folks that are experiencing homelessness. And then just to kind of give you an idea about numbers, so this last point in time survey in 2017, we had 344, and in 2016 it was 395. So that's actually a decrease. But I just want to caution you, this is an estimate. It's the best estimate. It's in a point in time. So just want to put that out there. So in, let's see, January, the Department of Housing and Urban Development released a notice saying, hey, these are the additional components that you need to build into your coordinated entry system. So we already had an existent coordinated entry system, but we needed to add some additional components to it. And so with the help of our technical assistance provider, Julie, who you guys will get to hear from, we convened a 2-day workshop. And we had tons of providers from the homelessness community and stakeholders, and really redesigned what our workshop looks like. I'll get into that a little bit more, but I just want to kind of just give you that brief highlight. This last year, we also, my position transferred to the Housing and Community Development Office under the City of Missoula. So I'm still funded by the city and county, but now I'm in the new housing division. So really, the United Way was a huge very helpful in incubating the United Way, or the 10-year plan to end homelessness. And they're still our private sector fundraiser and really helping out keep the plan going as well. And it's still an initiative. We launched our coordinate entry system in June, so kind of knowing that we have all these components, and I like to use the term that we're building the plane, but we're in the air as well. So we know that we've launched the system, we're implementing it, but we're also tweaking and making adjustments as we go. Along with that, we are supporting the statewide effort in launching coordinate entry. So I went around with Julie McFarland and we co-facilitated workshops across the state. So Kalispell, Billings, Bozeman, and several other big city hubs. So we've been really at the forefront in trying to help other communities get coordinate entry up and running as well. And that's been really, I think beneficial because we're sharing knowledge, we're sharing resources, and we're sharing what works and what doesn't work. And so if I create something here with our implementation team, we can send it over there and vice versa, so we're not having to reinvent the wheel, which is really nice. How am I doing on time? Okay. So really calling this Coordinate Entry System version 2.0. That's not an official title, I just put that out there. So some of my implementation team might be like, where did that come from? But just to kind of let you guys know that we've changed it a little bit. So the biggest piece about Coordinate Entry is ensuring that people have rapid access to safe, long-term housing that's sustainable for them. So really shifting to a homeless crisis response system. It's going to take us some time to get there. There's a lot of culture shift and programming shifts that need to happen in our community. For example, I like to use an example. If you're in a mental health crisis, we don't want to prolong it, right? We want to really try to resolve it as quickly as possible. So the same thing if you're in a housing crisis. Let's resolve that as quickly as possible. So really shifting in, instead of we're trying to call like shelter beds crisis beds. So the same kind of parallel to being in a mental health crisis. Diversion. So in our coordinate entry system, all of our front doors, our access points to coordinate entry, are being very intentional about trying to divert people from even entering our homeless crisis response system. So what that means is helping people identify any other safe alternative to coming into the homeless crisis response system. We know that it can be really hard to get out of the shelter system, that it can be really traumatic for people, and so we want to, at all possible, help them identify another alternative that's safe, and meanwhile, try to help them obtain permanent housing while they're in that situation. Grab some water. The other aspect of coordinate entry is really making sure that we are being intentional about our limited housing resources. So when I'm talking about coordinate entry, I'm talking about our homelessness system. I'm not talking about mainstream resources, housing, that sort of thing. I'm talking about housing that, in order to be eligible, you have to meet the criteria for the Department of Housing and Urban Development's homeless criteria, or homeless definition. So making sure that we're being very intentional about that, if matching people with a high priority to a high intervention, and not making sure that we're mismatching that. The other piece about coordinate entry, and again, noticing earlier how many people in the room that I know, we're all working together. We're all working together so we don't duplicate services, so we can streamline services. We know that we don't have enough staff. There's a lot of people that are staying at the POB, for example. So how do we work together and not just work within our own agencies? And so I like to use an example of we're one agency now with one caseload. The other piece with being kind of that one agency mind, we're also collecting system-wide data. So the YWCA, Poverello, they might, for example, know what their housing placement rate is, but what does that look like system-wide? And so now we're able to catch the data of how many people are coming into homelessness, what's their length of stay in homelessness, and then how many people are getting housed. So we didn't have that information before, which is really exciting that we can finally track that now. And then what we were, I think, with the 10-year plan, what does it mean to end homelessness? You can have a 10-year plan, but what does that really mean? And so we actually landed on a definition, which is to make sure that homelessness is rare, brief, and non-recurring. So in order to get there, we have to end chronic homelessness so we can have a homeless crisis response system. So this is a graphic that I think can show you what coordinated entry looks like. So we have everyone using, so just back to an agency again, one agency, everyone's using the same kind of diversion, common assessment tool, and assessing folks, and then being assigned housing navigators to make sure they don't fall through the system, fall through the cracks, and then connecting them to housing and supports. And so our front doors are the 211 phone system through Human Resource Council, the YWCA, Poverello Center, Salvation Army, and then we have several partners as well. So the goal is to reduce the burden on people experiencing homelessness. The system providers will take on that burden. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to the panel to answer some questions. I know I was saying we had 12. One person had to go because she had a sick kiddo, and that was Amy Cheeseborough from the jail, and Lori Pope is not here. So we'll make up a reason for her.
All right, I'll just echo Teresa's thanks for having you all join us today. Point of order, this lovely orange sticker is what you will need to tap if you want anyone to hear you. And we are recording this so that we can have it easily accessible to people who couldn't make it today. So make sure you're using your mic so that that recording can pick that up. We'd like to first start out with just kind of going around the table, and we would love for you all to share where our mics you can't trip on, so that's good. Where you work at, and we'd love to hear about your experience and what brought you either to your work or to coordinated entry, and really not just what brought you to this work, but the different areas that you've worked within this, whether it's in your current role or what history you have in your organization or in the field at large. That will not only give the audience context for the comments that you'll make today, but we do want to open this up to questions from the public, and we'll also let them know the depth of experience at the table and what potential questions we can answer for them as well. So we'll start with you, Mary Jane.
My name is Mary Jane Nealon. I'm the Director of Innovation at Partnership Health Center. I've been an RN for 42 years. And at Partnership, I oversee sort of special programs until they're functioning, and then we hand them off and I get to do other programs. But I'm particularly interested in housing because I worked as a nurse in permanent supportive housing, homeless. Can I just say, I always cry because I'm so enraged that in this country, homeless people don't have shelter of so I'll do the best I can to contain myself. But I worked in the flop house hotels and in homeless shelters, and I saw how people's lives changed, and they changed their lives, and they maximized their gift to our community with the most basic shelter, the tiniest little SRO. Even in the flop houses, and this is something I think is so important for this community, in the flop house hotels you had like 50 stalls, chicken coop wire, no ceiling, one bathroom for 50 men, but they made such a tight community. And as those flop houses went away, you saw that they were a network that helped each other, if not stay sober, stay functioning. And I remember somebody made penny sculptures on his wall, and it was like 4 foot by 6 foot. And he had these beautiful penny sculptures of Greek gods. And I asked him one day, like, just what kept him, he was being really hard on himself. And I said, but have you ever taken apart these penny sculptures to get vodka? And he said, no, because it was his home. It decorated his home. So I love this community. I'm so in awe of the people at this table and in the audience. And I know this is going to happen so that, I can move somewhere there's an ocean. But I won't stop. And Partnership will do anything we can, and I'm sure you'll ask that, but we will do anything we can to provide services if you get a building.
Hello, I'm Mary Hutton. I'm the Regional Director for Community Benefit and Care Transitions at Providence St. Patrick Hospital. And I had the great privilege of being on the original committee that created the 10-year plan to end homelessness. And for us at Providence, and for me personally, it's the right work that we needed to be engaged in. Obviously, in the work that we do at Providence, we see a number of homeless individuals, and we really do understand the inequity that they experience related to their health, and frankly, at times feel powerless, because where do we discharge them to? And doing everything we could to try to make that work, but it was an inadequate system. And so, again, we very much want to be part of the solution that the community comes up with, and we're really proud to partner with many in this room.
How's everybody this evening? I swear they're all supposed to say, yes, I'm good. I'm Don Evans with the Union Gospel Mission, the executive director and the new guy in the city. I'm a Montanan, grew up in Great Falls and went to junior high and high school there, and have been all over the nation from college in Colorado to Florida and Alaska. And one thing that I've learned from living in all those places is that, one, there's the common language of love for people. And I've been taught throughout that time how to see people for who they are. The commissioner brought up no labels, taking labels off of people, and that's our focus at Union Gospel Mission. It's not homeless or homelessness, it's a slash through it. It's, this is Mike, this is Sally, this is a person and people that we want to help. And so much of that gets missed that it really is all of our jobs to help people see that and be aware of that, wherever that might be. I have a slide in our volunteer orientation that puts up a whole bunch of people, and I ask people, who'd you see first? And it's this person or that person, the clothing, the skin color. And then I ask them, did you see anybody that's in need? And that's really where we have to refocus ourselves, because we get into taking care of ourselves and we are happy and comfortable, but there are people that are out there that need our help, and I'm privileged to be a part of that, because that's the greatest thing, to give back. Bit of a weeper also over that. And for us at the Union Gospel Mission, our heart is to help with rescue and recovery and restoration, because lives that have been lost and have no hope, they need to have hope. That changes everything. And it's our privilege to be a part of the coordinated entry system, because I am not only a big dreamer, but I'm also a partner, a person that knows we can't do it ourselves, and we shouldn't be in reinventing the wheel. We should be identifying what we're here to do, joining that together with one another, and for the common good of the whole, that's synergy. And we're going to have a good time doing that, because we get to change lives at the same time. And it's not about enablement, it's about empowerment and transformation, because we can get them into housing, like Mary Egan said, but we're also going to stick with them through the run and help them learn how to take care of a plant again, let alone their bills, and how to take care of themselves in their house, because we want success. That's what I heard. So that's what we're here to do, and to do it well with all of you and all of these partners, because that's what's going to make the difference. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Cindy Weiss with the YWCA, and I've been working in this field in one way or the other for the past 26 years. I've been at the YWCA as the director for the last 17 years, and my background is really a strong background in working with domestic violence survivors, and the YWCA has been doing that since 1977. And for so many years, we would be able to bring women and their children into our shelter and provide safety for them. And as long as they were with us, they, were able to stay free from the violence, but the biggest barrier was that they couldn't stay in our shelter forever, and they needed their own homes. And it was so difficult for them to find housing here. They might be able to leave for a short term, and then we'd see them again coming through the doors, and they'd resolve the domestic violence in their lives, but they were now struggling with homelessness. And so in 2009, when the Salvation Army had determined that they could no longer operate the emergency housing program that we depended on so much at the YWCA, we knew that we had to step forward and help continue that program in the community. And so that's what we do today, and we still have our domestic violence shelter. We are working with not only women who are fleeing domestic violence, but two-parent families as well. And one of the things that I'm excited about with the changes that we've been working on this past year is that when we took on that program in 2009, and really until up until 2 years ago, we housed families for up to 50 to 60 days, and about 10 to 20% of them would be able to resolve their homelessness during that time. And today, I think last year we were getting close to 80% moving into permanent housing out of the emergency housing program. And not only that, we're seeing that the stay is shorter. So it used to be 50 to 60 days, and now within 30 days we're able to get them into their own homes. So I'm really excited to see where we're at 2 years from now. And I'll turn this over to Julie.
That's exciting data. Thank you. I'm Julie McFarland. I am the technical assistance provider that is working across the state of Montana to help communities implement coordinated entry. My first job in homelessness was at the Poverello Center through college. I was evening staff. It was a terrible experience. It was a very different shelter then, and I realized that I knew that we could do this work better, and I needed to figure out what that meant. So my next role was overseeing homeless housing and services in Seattle, several different programs for families and youth. I was asked to oversee the launch of coordinated entry in Seattle, and from that I learned exactly how not to do it. So since then I have been providing technical assistance probably to 15 different communities as they've launched their system. I too started at the Poverello Center back in the day. Julie actually helped me get the job. And that was an eye-opener for me as well. It was just managing homelessness. It was if people weren't following the rules or if they're intoxicated, let's kick them out. And what I appreciate about this system is that we are recognizing we need to lower the barriers. We need to find out why we still have a chronic homeless population. And coordinated entry flips the system. So now we're focusing on the most vulnerable. I know I'm supposed to talk about my role. You guys know my role, so I just had to put that in there. But very passionate about homelessness. I've worked in correctional mental health. I've worked in family shelters and the POV. And I took this position not knowing what it meant at first, but I knew that I needed to be part of the system change and move from managing it to actually solving it and resolving it. So that's why I'm here to do this work.
Me three started at the POV, and I'm still at the POV. So I manage the Housing Montana Heroes, the transitional housing program for veterans that are transitioning out of homelessness into permanent housing, and that's located at the Poverello Center. Veterans can live there for up to 2 years. We provide various services, including most recently group and individual therapy, respite care for veterans who don't have a home and are discharging from a hospital, but then also case management and assisting them with their housing search, of course, when they find permanent housing in the community. I started at the POV when I was in undergrad and as a practicum student or doing my internship there, and that was at the old POV. I was there just long enough to appreciate the new POV. And So I stayed there through graduate school and am still there now and have been really involved with coordinated entry, especially on the veteran services side.
That's 4, starting at the Poverello Center. I also, I got my start at the Poverello Center about 4.5 years ago, working as day staff at the front desk. I was brought there by a postgraduate service program, and I really just fell in love with meeting homeless people who are at the worst times in their life, and meeting them where they're at and walking with them and trying to build relationships and get them into housing as quickly as possible. I've been working on the homeless outreach team for about 2.5 years, going out and talking to people who are shelter resistant or for whatever reason don't want to come to the Poverello Center, and building relationships and trying our best to keep them alive and keep them going. And ever since June, it's been so much better with the coordinated entry system, kind of having a goal in mind of getting them into housing. It's not just going to go check in on so-and-so, make sure he's okay, and give him some socks and something to keep him warm and some food. I'm going to meet so-and-so on the street, I'm going to do my assessment with him, and we're going to get him into a house as quickly as possible. And so that's really been a nice fire that was been missing for a little bit in my work. And so it's really exciting, and I'm very, very happy to continue doing it.
My name is Sheila Moore. I work for the police department. I've been with the department for 21 years. I never worked at the Poverello, but I have responded to the Poverello for 21 years as a police officer. Right now I'm in a specialized assignment. I am the Business Improvement District Officer, which means I patrol a section of downtown, basically from Burns Street to the west, the railroad tracks to the north, 4th Street to the south, and Madison Street to the east. That is my specified zone where I handle calls for service, and as you can imagine, many of those calls do involve individuals who are experiencing homelessness in our community. I work with many of the people here and do a lot of casual information sharing on individuals that I perceive to be most vulnerable on a day-to-day, almost hour-to-hour basis during the 40 hours that I'm working. I also work with the community resource officers who are out making those contacts, and we're in the field every day checking on these individuals and communicating with certainly the Poverello, the 316, the Y, other agencies, certainly the ER, about individuals that we're seeing that are in a pretty acute and extreme situation because they are homeless. I took this position after 20 years of service with the city because I thought it would be the most unique and challenging in the ninth inning of my career, and it has proved to be just that. It takes every ounce of energy, compassion, humor, and patience that I can bring to this endeavor every day. It's been tremendously rewarding. It's been sad and heart-wrenching at times, but I'm very happy and excited to be part of this. And Theresa's been a fantastic point person to allow me to pass information on and participate in this process.
My name is Darren Ashby, and I work as an addiction counselor licensee candidate at Stepping Stones Counseling. I'm also on the board of directors at the Missoula Interfaith Collaborative and the leadership team with Partners for Integration. My background is that I spent about 30 years battling with addiction to various substances, and then in 2008 my activities brought me under the watchful eye of the local law enforcement officials who caught me manufacturing my own methamphetamine, and then I went to prison for a few months and then went to treatment, which was probably the biggest gift that the state of Montana could have given me. I left treatment and went to the pre-release, immediately enrolled into the University of Montana because I wanted to become an addiction counselor. And as I went through that experience of going to school, that's where I became introduced to the Missoula Interfaith Collaborative. And I really started to learn that what was helping me the most was being accepted, being told I was valuable, and really being welcomed into the community. So when I started working with MIC, then I really wanted to try to do that for other people and really meet people where they're at, let them know they're valued, they're accepted, and that they have the ability to move on from what is this momentary, brief, hopefully highly traumatic juncture in their life. So yeah, that's pretty much where the passion's at. And then at the same time, I also, with the Partners for Reintegration, spent some time talking at the legislature trying to help get House Bill 65 passed, which authorized the some housing funding for returning citizens, and then also the fund for that risk mitigation fund to help people that are currently experiencing homelessness get landlords to give them a chance. And that's it for me.
Thank you all. I would agree. We do tend to be a weepy group up here, and it's because we all dedicate our days, but a vast majority of us have also dedicated our careers and our life's work to ending homelessness, and so this is something that we feel deeply on a daily basis. And while I think we would all be in agreement that this group is absolutely amazing, it is also just the tip of the iceberg in Missoula in terms of the expertise and the dedication and the commitment to ending this issue, and a lot of you are in the audience, and so we'd like to thank all of you for your work on this issue as well. So we're going to go into some questions now and just lead the group through a few areas that we really want to highlight in terms of how the system is shifting and growing, some of the challenges we're facing, and some of the things we're excited about moving ahead. So to start, our local nonprofit community has always worked in partnership with one another. However, shifting to this coordinated entry model has required an even stronger emphasis on collaboration, shared accountability, and communication between our organizations. I'd love to hear from our front door agencies that are present, and those are the agencies that are doing the assessments and really participating at that ground level for the coordinated entry system. I'd love to hear from you guys about some of the challenges of this renewed emphasis on collaboration and how this increased collaboration is starting to bear fruit in our work.
Yes, you did. I am.
Cindy, would you like to start us off?
I may not be the best one to start off because I'm not working in direct service. I'm looking at, where's Daisha? Daisha's back there in the audience, running our emergency housing program. I will say I think that it's been, certainly challenging in the beginning anytime you take on such a big endeavor with a lot of partners who have been working hard but independently to serve the people who walk through our doors every day, and also to change a system where someone who walks into the YWCA, isn't necessarily going to be helped right then, that we're going to work with our partners to make sure that we're identifying those who are the most vulnerable so that we're able to direct resources to them. So I think in the beginning there were quite a few challenges. I think we've been slowly working on those through regular meetings and communication. I think there was a meeting in our conference room today, a long meeting in our conference room today to fine-tune that system. But for us, I think what we've noticed is that we have a large fund from HUD for rapid rehousing, rent assistance for homeless families. And it's been, the system that we put into place has been very helpful because what we've recognized, we thought all the homeless families in Missoula were coming to the YWCA to apply for services. And what we've realized is that's not true. In fact, maybe a third of the families that we were seeing, it represented a third of the total homeless families in the community. And so now we have this system where our resources can be used not only for those who are able to navigate their way and figure out that the YWCA is the place that you should go, but those that walk into the Salvation Army, call 211, maybe go to the POB because they think the POB shelters families, and we're able to spend those resources down. We actually have so much HUD funding that there were times in the past couple of years where we thought, are we going to be able to spend this down by the time the program year is up? That's not an issue anymore, and we are serving, I think last year in our rapid rehousing program, we served 74 families. Before this coordinated entry system, we wouldn't have seen those 74 families come through our doors. So I think that's one of the big successes.
So I think that collaboration has really been key in this process. One of the big things I saw was that, you know, especially in the veteran community, veterans can hear about resources for them from word of mouth, you know, veteran to veteran or other people, or they go into one agency and they say, have you tried here, have you tried here, have you tried here? And they're going to multiple places. And so once we started the coordinated entry system and we all got around one table, all the service providers, and said, hey, I'm working with this person, we realized that other people at the table were saying the same thing, and that veteran had been in their office and in their agency, and that we really were duplicating services and not making things any easier on that individual to find housing when they're going to multiple agencies. So then assigning them one person to kind of help them navigate that process has really streamlined not only the process for them, but also lessened our workload in a way, because we're not duplicating services with other agencies. So I think that collaboration has really been key in that way.
I would just add that in working with a specific client or with a group of clients that all share the same barriers, we all like to fancy ourselves like resource experts in Missoula. Unfortunately, you can never really be an expert at an agency that you don't work at. So being around the table with agencies from all around Missoula really helps you get at what programs are right for certain individuals, what snags you might run into when using those programs, and even telling you about programs that you haven't heard about that might fit this particular challenge. And it really helps to get all those really smart people together to solve a problem like that.
So we're not a front door, but I would say that we're a side door. I don't know if that's like version 2. Partner works, but okay. So I would say not just the tip of the iceberg, but for us, the tip of the spear is April Seat, the Director of Outreach. So like you, not dealing with filling out the forms and being a part of that hands-on, what I get is all of the things that are said about it as a whole from everyone. And what's exciting to us is that we can be from beginning to end with that person as they start the process, getting to know them and understanding who they are. And for us, we have the time and energy to be able to be in relationship with them at a point where they really are experiencing love. Now for us, what this does is it shows me the bigger picture, because we're connected with the community of churches through the MIC as well, to be able to start to see how the church, knowing, because we're constantly telling them that's another piece to this part of meeting everybody's needs, that now that we see this and how well this plays into taking care of our community, that we're seeing how we can also say, hey, here's all these other resources. So not long from now, maybe hopefully less than 2 years, we'll be seeing where the coordinated entry system will be able to say, okay, we don't have that funding for this, but we know where we can go to this resource within the church community and get scripts filled, or gas cards, or the things that aren't necessarily coming in through financing from grants that have to be used a certain way. And I'm excited about that because that's a huge part. So for us to be involved in the coordinated entry systems, like we're all tying our shoelaces together, and it's like, okay, we're getting ready to run. So it's been excellent for us to see your part as well, so that we know the big picture and being able to communicate that to the rest of the community that isn't here tonight. Thanks.
I feel like I need to explain myself while I was just cutting him off for there for a second. So part
She
of
didn't
coordinate.
like side door, I know.
It's a trigger word for me. So part of coordinate entry is that homeless assistance providers buy into the system and they pull their referrals straight from coordinate entry. A side door means that they're also serving people that are coming in to their front door or side door and not coming straight through coordinate entry. So all of our housing providers that provide homelessness assistance are coming through coordinate entry, and so the side door is a trigger word because we don't want to have a side door because, again, we're one agency, we have one caseload. Kind of what Cindy was talking about, they thought all the vulnerable families were coming through their door, not knowing that they're coming through other doors as well. So if we, the old way of thinking about it was, who's coming through the door, they all seem vulnerable to me, but not knowing what is the full scope, what does the community-wide vulnerability look like. I wanted to correct that. And then partner agency, so I just want to explain that as well. So we have our front doors, those are our access points, they're marketed, people know about them, but then we have several partner agencies who are able to help people get into coordinated entry as well, so they don't have to refer to a front door. And so Partnership, for example, and Union Gospel Mission, our jail diversion program through Western Montana Mental Health, Family Promise of Missoula Interfaith Collaborative, those are all partner agencies, so they can help people triage, try to divert, and if diversion is not successful, enter them into coordinate entry. So just want to explain some terminology that we're using up here.
Thank you. I talked to another provider the other day, and they were highlighting the fact that we've always collaborated really well together as a community, and I think that's absolutely true. I think what feels different this time is we haven't always been this strategic in the way that we collaborate, and I think that's something that everybody is really feeling. I'm curious, and I'd love to hear from Mary and Mary Jane. We know that housing and healthcare are intricately connected. How do you guys see the stronger emphasis on collaboration in communication impacting health outcomes for the people that you serve, and do you see that happening already?
Yes, we actually do see that happening already. And for those of you, another effort that we have going on currently in the community is called the Medical Respite Program. And through those efforts, part of what we have to do is to, again, the word intention has been used a lot today, and it's to really know who we're serving. And so we do spend a lot of time internally identifying individuals and collaborating, and we have a shared formal partnership with the Poverello, and we do get together and we talk about, again, a cohort of identified individuals that agree to participate in the Medical Respite Program, but we are seeing some real gains and really ultimately reducing the health inequities of this population and really getting down to the individual. So for us here at Providence, it also means doing extra. So it may mean calling Will, particular patient has a follow-up appointment. If you see him or her, will you make sure you remind them of that appointment? So we are down to that level of collaboration. We are also starting to see, for again, this specific cohort of patients, we're reducing the ED visits of this cohort of patients. We're reducing the length of stay, actually compared to our larger patient population, by a difference of 2 days. And that is incredible. And again, that's really speaks to the partnership that we have with the Poverello through the Medical Respite Program. And so that really is starting to address the health inequities that they experience. Also getting them connected to a primary care provider. And of the cohort of patients that we're serving, Medicaid is a primary payer of services for this cohort of patients. And so, again, Medicaid expansion has made a significant difference for this patient population. And so I cannot underscore strongly enough how impactful Medicaid expansion has been for them.
And so, like Cindy, I feel a little guilty talking because Netta Linda and Anna Scott-Anilis are in the audience. And I think of two things. I think invisibility and movement as part of outcomes. So we, Partnership Health Center served 15,290 people last year. 9% of them were homeless. Over 1,000 people identified as homeless. And the standard for federally qualified community health centers in the nation is about 5% of their population are homeless. So we know the numbers are more than we know that they are. And I don't want to project on staff, but I would say I have heard more satisfaction from Netta, Anna, and Yvonne, who are 3 SOAR certified social workers. And the excitement I feel from them around coordinated entry and SOAR certification is that you're moving people that you've had compassion for a lot of years. And people can't be moved if they don't want to move. So it's like the system is sort of opening for them, and you can't begin to think about health if you're not sheltered. And so, you know, we have a super utilizer program, and we have a team that goes to houses, and we originally were going to exclude people with active drug addiction, exclude people with serious mental illness, because we wanted to be successful. But every person that was referred to us as using the ER or the hospital a lot were like, oh, okay, addiction, oh, okay, mentally ill. But they worked with them, and in 6 months, we showed a savings of $566,000 to this community, and it was an estimate. And so we said to Medicaid, we've saved this money, but it's an estimate based on averages. They said, hey, we're the payer, we can look at the real claims, and it was much more dramatic than that. And so now they're talking about how they can fund teams of people. If you don't go out, I have so much respect for the HOT team. If you're not willing to walk that walk and go out there and meet people where they are, then you are not going to be able to do things like help them manage their blood pressure, keep them out of kidney failure, all the things that really cost a tremendous amount of money. We saw dramatic health improvements on every single person enrolled in the super utilizer program. It was 31 people. But I think this position, this community is moving as one. I love that. One agency, one caseload. And I think, and I'll wrap up, I know I'm a chatterer too, but I cry, I talk. But, but I think if you have permanent supportive housing, and I know you will, being able to deliver, to be able to go and say, you don't have to come to this institution where you feel maybe judged or excluded, or we're going to come to you and we're going to show you how to check your blood sugar. We're going to make sure you get to your dialysis appointment. We're going to do all that stuff with our partners. And that is how you change people's lives. And we're just standing there kind of waiting to do it.
Guys, thank you for that perspective. I think it's really helpful. We see so much progressive activity happening right now with housing and healthcare, and I think it's exciting to see what's happening nationwide and to figure out how we can scale that to meet the needs in our community. One of the primary goals of coordinated entry is to serve the most vulnerable, often chronically homeless individuals first. Julie, I'm hoping you can talk with us a little bit about why this is smart and what outcomes communities like ours are seeing nationwide.
Okay. Yeah, the national trend is very much to serve the most vulnerable people first, and there are a variety of reasons for that. Historically, prior to having a coordinated entry system, it's pretty common that as organizations we're serving the people who are savvy enough to get to our door and ask for help, and maybe we have an opening and can help them. And what we know is that folks who do have those skills to be able to end up at a front door like that are generally folks who also have a support network and can be diverted with a light touch of support. They can self-resolve their situation in a lot of cases too. So we were utilizing resources in a way that wasn't strategic and intentional. And this shift really makes sure that we provide the front door entities with the skills to be able to support self-resolution and diversion for those folks who do have a safe alternative, and really reroute our very, very limited housing resources that are very expensive for the people who cannot self-resolve and cannot be diverted into a safe alternative. There's a lot of cost savings associated with focusing on the most vulnerable, and I think you just heard some examples of folks where their utilization of emergency services and institutions like our jails goes significantly down. So I would say there are a variety of reasons. We can't just make the shift to prioritizing the most vulnerable folks without really providing support to folks at the front door to help with that self-resolution and diversion. It's really, there's a broad spectrum of support that we have to provide, but we have to make sure that we're matching what we provide with what a person actually needs so that our resources can stretch further.
Thank you. And as a follow-up, I'm wondering if, Will, you can share some perspective from the HOT team and, possibly Dawn as well from 316 about what you guys face when you are trying to connect people who've been living on the streets for decades with housing and services for the first time. We know, as Mary Jane points out, you guys are amazing and creative and scrappy, and the work you do is really difficult. So how do you overcome some of those challenges and make those connections?
Sure. So I think one of the first problems we run into is documents. A lot of people that are living on the streets for many, many years don't have adequate documentation. I don't know where my Social Security card is. I haven't needed it for a while, but I would have to go get one at the Social Security office if I needed it. It might be at my home in New Jersey. I don't actually know. But the point is, carrying those things around with you when you don't have a home is dangerous, it's risky, and it often doesn't work. We have so many people who just lose things, and once you lose one piece or once you lose two pieces, then it becomes a card game to get you have to go here first and then there first and there first. Navigating the Social Security office in Missoula alone is awful. I don't wish it upon anyone. So that's a big problem, is document readiness. You need those documents for basically anything. Federally subsidized housing programs need you to prove that you are a citizen, so that's important. And then you need an ID to rent from anywhere usually. So that's a big challenge, a big hurdle that we face. And the second is just simply people not being used to living in a house. It's really just the same as if any one of us became homeless tomorrow. You wouldn't know what to do, where to go. Your whole life would be flipped upside down. And it's the same thing if you have been homeless for 10 years. You don't know to buy garbage bags or to buy toilet paper or stocking your fridge, anything, 1,000 things. Sleeping in a bed or not. We have a guy right now who does not sleep in a bed because he's used to sleeping on the floor. So there's a million things that you can just get used to and be afraid of living inside. So that's, I would say, the number one issue is getting people comfortable with living indoors. I always tell people it's better to have a house and leave it. People do that a lot. It's called camping. You can do that. You can have your house and just go sleep in the forest. Go sleep in the woods for 6 days. You can do it. Go for it. And then you have a house to come back to when you're done doing that. So that's, I think, that is the number one challenge with working with people who have been homeless for a long time.
To add to that, because those are excellent, it would be actually building a relationship where there's trust. So much of what we think is the answer, well, you just need to get into a home and you'll be fine. It's natural for us to think that, and yet those things that you talked about, Will, are huge, and it's them actually wanting to. Trusting you to say, yeah, you're leading me down a path where that's best for me, where I can be a healthy, contributing member to society again, because I've forgotten what that is, and yeah, why do I need a Social Security card? And the challenge of getting over that. But whoa, how happy it is for all of us when they say, I'm ready, and being able to help them get that. And that's, where you bend over backwards to get that done, because a generous man who refreshes others will himself be refreshed. And that is a joy for all of us. So.
Thank you. So we've heard about national research. We know that serving the most vulnerable, chronically homeless individuals first is smart from a variety of perspectives, both from a human perspective and a financial one for the community. And we heard some numbers, I think, that are really compelling and tell us that as well. Sheila, I'm wondering if you can talk with us a little bit about what it looks like when we don't serve this population. So in Missoula currently, we don't have housing or supportive services in any in-depth fashion to support people who are chronically homeless, living on the streets with addiction. And so in the absence of that service, what are you seeing on the streets, and how do you think that would change if we had supportive housing for these folks?
Well, I can tell you that for anyone that moves around Missoula on a bicycle, or if you're out walking, you cross a bridge anywhere in this community, and on any given night, there's going to be 1 or 2 people, male or female, sleeping under a bridge. If there's a dry spot and it's high, they're out of the water, people are sleeping everywhere, in culverts, doorways, parks, the wooded areas along the river banks on both sides, all up and down what's Kim Williams Trail, Eastland University. There are camps everywhere, and a lot of you, if you've been in Missoula for a while, you've seen those camps, you've discovered them yourself, you've walked into them, stumbled in them. So we have individuals, there was just a fellow I was with this morning, and I asked him where he slept last night. He didn't tell me specifically, but he said on the ground, in a safe place where I knew I wasn't going to get robbed, have my documents stolen from me, have whatever cash he had on him stolen from him. So these individuals are scrappy to the utmost. They're resourceful in a way that is almost just unbelievable, and they have a very tight network to help each other and to pass information on places they can go for food, for medical care. They share what they have with each other, and they exist on a day-to-day basis. Doesn't even matter what the weather is. And I can tell you that we are checking these locations every day during our work days, during our work hours, and after dark. And it's not necessarily to do enforcement, to write tickets, to make arrests. They're welfare checks. And sometimes those are called in by citizens, but a lot of them are, we're out on patrol and we say, hey, let's go. We haven't seen a certain individual for a while. Let's go see if we can find him. And then we start to make some phone calls. We call the hot team. We call 316. April, we start to kind of work together and say, hey, there's somebody we haven't seen. Have you guys been seeing this person? And they might say no, and then we go out and we find them. And unfortunately, a year ago at this time, I think it was February, there was an individual who wasn't seen on the street in his usual locations. The patrol staff, patrol officers, myself, hadn't seen him, and he was located, and he had perished due to medical conditions as well as extreme weather. So what we see is that these people do perish if they're not getting services and they're not being attended to every day. And we certainly are doing a lot of transports with MESI, fire department. We're going into the ER, we're getting these people checked, and that's super challenging because they can't be held sometimes, but at least we're getting them that attention. But a lot of them we know on a first name basis. Some of you guys know. But we're out there every day interacting with them. And it's not, again, people think you're just writing tickets, writing reports. Not at all. We're creating trust, relationships. Because one thing I've learned in my career is one day this individual might be a victim of a crime. The next day they might be potentially the perpetrator of a crime. And the next time they could be the victim of a crime. So how we leave those contacts with them every day, even if we have to do the enforcement, make an arrest, take them to the jail, write them a ticket, whatever, we try to do it with compassion and understanding. Because you don't know what situation they're going to be in the next time you come upon them.
And just, can I just ask a follow-up question really quickly too? We do expend a lot of resources as a community, both through police and first responders and service providers on serving folks that are currently living on the streets. What impact would that have for police and first responders and others if we can work strategically to house this group of individuals?
Well, I can tell you it's fantastic when one of these individuals does get into housing. This past late November, we had an individual that was homeless for quite a while in Missoula. He has left Missoula because a family member came took him back home. We all know his circumstance, his situation, and it is a total victory for everyone. But it's a significant reduction in cost and calls for service and call volume. We're not attending to that person, either medical transport, incarceration, court fees, public attorneys, all the things that are incumbent with doing enforcement on these individuals. So monetarily, it's a huge savings, but psychologically, emotionally, it's great for that individual and it's great for the community because we can focus our attention on potentially more problematic things rather than the residual repeated call for minor things constantly.
Thank you. Thank you. And so we have been talking a lot about concentrating resources to support this most vulnerable chronically homeless population that is utilizing most of the resources in our community. So I want to go back to something that Julie had said earlier about diversion and how we're addressing the need for people who need more of a light hand. Julie, can you talk just a little bit about diversion?
Sure. So communities that have successfully implemented diversion have seen pretty consistent success rates. So from those communities, we have learned that of the families who come to the front door of our homeless system asking for help, on average, 50% of families can be diverted into a safe alternative. And when it comes to single adults, about 30% on average can be diverted from the homeless system. We also know that that is an extremely cost-effective intervention as well. Only about a third of the time when we're able to divert folks, do they require any type of financial assistance. And when financial assistance is required, we're talking about a few $100s usually. It's a very small amount compared to the rental assistance or the permanent supportive housing resources that we have that are extremely costly. So the thing with that is it's a little bit uncomfortable because diversion often means that we are helping facilitate reconnection to a safe alternative in someone's life, and that often means they're doubling up or moving back in with family and friends. And I think we start to deal internally with our struggle around overcrowding and comfort and quality of life or quality of living situation. And I think that's been a big cultural shift both locally and nationally as we've tried to divert the majority of folks who come to the front door in making sure that we're promoting choice and we're never forcing someone into a situation that they don't want to be in, that they're choosing to make this reconnection, even if it's something that we might not choose for ourselves. If that's a safe alternative, we need to help support people in that. That really helps us then hone in our more expensive and intensive interventions for the folks who absolutely can't be diverted into a safe alternative.
In wrapping our heads around diversion, I think, was a really big philosophical shift for service providers in Missoula, and really looking at how we deal with the fact that we have an overburdened system that simply will never have the resources to provide assistance to everybody who presents as needing assistance. And so I'm wondering, we're very new in our diversionary efforts, but I'm wondering if any of the organizations at the table can talk about how that has worked on the ground or any success stories that we've had with that. We have had some. I know this. I know this to be true. All right. Great. Well, we'll move on to our next question. You guys are just going to have to trust me on that.
Can I give you one?
Yes,
okay,
please.
I hope that this data is correct. POV folks might have to correct me, but when we launched diversion 6 months-ish ago and trained folks up, a very light training. We haven't even been through the really awesome intensive training locally yet. We're working on that. But folks said, we need to try this, and we're willing to get a small amount of training and test this out. And the folks at the POV went first. And what they did was, there are a lot of people that are at the POV and have been there for a considerable amount of time, and you would guess that there is probably not a safe alternative in the majority of their lives, right? But they said this will be good practice and it's worth having the conversation just in case anyone can be diverted. And what I heard is that going through that exercise resulted in 10% of folks who were staying at the Poverello being able to be diverted. And we expected maybe 1 or 2 people, but a 10% success rate in diverting folks from further entering our homeless system, which then freed up beds at the Poverello for folks who were staying outside. That amazed me. And I use that in communities all the time as a good example. So good job, Pav. Did I get the data right? Sure. Yeah. Amy? Yes, okay.
We have our POV director nodding her head, so yeah. And that's a phenomenal example, and we always like to be used, as a success story. So that's great. So I want to talk a little bit about barriers that folks face, even if they aren't facing income or financial barriers. So currently the vacancy rate for rentals in Missoula is hovering around 2%. So in a market this competitive, income is only the first barrier or the first hurdle that individuals face as they work towards housing. So I'd love to hear more from Darren or Will, others who are working directly with clients, about the common barriers that people face when securing and maintaining housing, especially those re-entering the community.
Well, one of the biggest barriers people face is actually carrying a felony conviction or having to register as either a sex offender or a violent offender. I've worked with, or I did work with a few families when I was working with the Housing Advocate Network, where the husband had come back from prison and they were carrying some felony charges now. And since he had moved back, they were now in the violation of their lease, which said that they couldn't have any felonies or any felons on their property. And so then the whole family was evicted from the house, and then so they had to start looking for housing. Well, in Missoula, I would guess that 90% of the property management companies won't work with people who have a felony conviction, and especially if they have to register as a sexual or violent offender, which doesn't really promote the idea of somebody trying to come back from prison and get their life together. If they are immediately being faced with homelessness, there's no sense of inclusion. You're not feeling like you're a member of the community. And plus, that doesn't actually make the community any safer. If you have people who are at risk for committing further crimes because they aren't able to support themselves, then you have people that you may want to keep an eye on, but you don't know where they're at. They're either under a bridge or in a park. So there are some people that, you really might want to know where they're at, and the best way to do that would be to welcome them into the community, make sure they have housing, and then help them get a job. And that gives them the opportunity to change, plus then you know where some of the people that you may need to keep an eye on are at. But the families that I have worked with, I worked with a couple of families that somebody had come back to the home from prison, and it was really a rewarding experience in a way, because the biggest thing they were facing was panic. So being able to meet with them and slow the situation down a little bit, recognize what their strengths were, get them plugged into the services that may help them get a place. But then, like the one family I worked with, the guy had been doing cooking in the prison and was really interested in becoming a chef. So right off the bat, plugged him in with Trio at the university. And within 3 months, he had his financial aid, he was going to school, they had a house. But it didn't take very long to give them enough hope that they started to move forward. When you're totally hopeless and don't feel like you're a member of the community, then you're stuck. And it seems like then you don't have the drive or desire to make a change, because what's the point? So I guess that's about all I have in the barriers that I've seen.
I think some other barriers that we were seeing, in addition to what Darren said, are just a lot of misdemeanors. We had one client who had several dozen misdemeanors, I would say, and he was rejected from a property management company because he had a pattern of criminal behavior. And I looked at his sheet from the municipal court, and was quite long, and they were all tickets related to homelessness, basically open containers, disorderly conduct, sleeping in a public right-of-way. And so we were able to appeal that decision, and they did overturn it, but I think that's also a barrier that we're finding. If you don't have any felonies, if you have a pattern of criminal behavior, you're excluded from some of the property management companies. Another one that we're seeing a lot of is zero or limited rental history. Even if you don't have bad rental history, having no rental history is also a problem, because no one's going to vouch for you that you're not going to trash this apartment or just up and leave one day. And poor credit's also a problem. Yeah, those are just two that we were seeing.
And I think both of those situations highlight why coordinated entry system is so important. Through coordinated entry, we match individuals with a housing navigator who help them navigate these systems and file these appeals and work to overcome the barriers that they have, because they can be daunting to move through them. So, well, with that, we would love to open this up to the audience to ask questions of our fantastic panel while you've got them all here in front of you. So if folks have questions, we can kind of queue up front near the mic. And if folks don't have questions, we can proceed to the next part. But do folks have questions? Okay.
So I just have one. I would love to have somebody just share the experience. How long is it? So I know, so my office window looks at the back of the aux. And so there's often some activity out there. And I know that there was a gentleman who was in a wheelchair and seemed to attract a lot of other folks. And he disappeared, and people thought something happened to him. And I want you to tell us what really happened to him. But I also just want to say that because of what you're going to tell us, other people's lives were influenced too, because he happened to have more money than the rest of them, and that's why they gathered round. But if you tell us the success story there.
I'm going to speak in general terms about the system without directly answering that question, because that would identify who that person is. But I think in general terms, we've been housing people that have been previously homeless for a long time, right? This new system that we've designed is now trying to target our limited resources to those who are vulnerable. So we've said that tonight. What that means is the folks that were coming to us previously saying, I want housing, we were serving them, but if we went and asked somebody if they want housing and said no, we would just give up and move on, right? Now we're not giving up. If they say no, then we're going to come back in a week and ask again and change our approach and figure out why they're saying no. Why are they declining housing? And I can give you an example. Just this past weekend, I saw someone around the fence you were talking about, the courthouse, and I wanted to see if he was even breathing. So I stopped by, and because he was in a snowbank, and it was actually a former client of mine when I did homeless outreach. And didn't recognize me, didn't remember me, and I was trying to talk about coordinated entry, and he said, the system don't work like that, Theresa. And I'm like, no, we want to house you. And so we have to work on rebuilding trust with a lot of these folks that have been on the streets the longest. We've had a high barrier system, so they couldn't come in and get help from us. Or if they said no, we just moved on and we accepted that no. And so this new system, the message is, and what we're all trying to do is, how can we change so that answer is a yes? And so I think in general terms, for these folks that you've seen on the streets, that you're worried that they're still alive, or if they're, have a lot of medical conditions, or if they're in a wheelchair, we cannot give up, and if they say no, we don't give up, and we keep trying, and we keep adjusting the system so it is a yes. And so immediately I emailed the HOT team, and I'm like, okay, what's the status on this person? Because right now, they're very hopeless, and they don't believe that the system is there to help house them, and so we have to change that, and we know that it's going to take some time. So I hope that answers your question in a general fashion, but I think just in a way, the most, our chronic homeless population, those that have been on the street the longest, we are trying to house them first.
And I will say,
assumption that he passed away and he was actually housed.
Yeah, and I will say, Commissioner Curtis, that 5 years ago, if somebody who had been living on our streets for decades, that was very recognizable to us all, disappeared, the assumption would be that that person passed away. And today, it's just as likely of an assumption that that person has been housed. And so I think that that is a fantastic thing that we can celebrate.
Hello all, my name is Heather Harp and I'm a newly elected councilwoman. Over the years I've often wondered when I run across somebody on the street, and this happened to Brian Van Lossberg and myself last night as we came out of council. We were approached by a couple of folks who needed help, but we didn't necessarily know where to send them, so Brian calls Aaron in the middle of the night wondering what we need to do. Where do we direct them? Do we call 911? Because they were intoxicated and we know the POV doesn't accept those individuals. So I guess my question would be, do we really have a central call center or a place that we can say, you need to call this person, or we can make that call and make that inquiry for them? And I think that would help many of us in our community who have a good heart, but we don't necessarily have the tools, or that we may not feel comfortable taking them to one place or another.
I'll take it. You said this was at night?
Yes. Yeah,
So we have set up our front doors so we can, accommodate that. It's not going to be an emergency response to fix the situation right then and there. But our front doors, we based it on kind of access and population and where most people are going to access help. And so 211 is 24/7. But I think in this situation, the first step is to direct them towards coordinated entry, which are those front door agencies that I've spoken of. But in the immediate, that's not going to mean like tomorrow we're going to be able to house them. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So help me out here. How else can I?
Where do we send people?
I would say, because there's not a phone number that you can call other than 211, and that's going to be during certain hours. For something that after hours like that, then you would be able to send them to the Union Gospel Mission Day Center. We know it as 316 is how it started out by name, because right now that's at least a warming center, warming shelter, and we might call that a wet house in regards to we're taking people in that are already inebriated or intoxicated to some point. They might be on something, but we're handling that on a case-by-case basis. Yes, that's a very challenging job, because it can change even a couple hours later when somebody does something when they're used to standing up in the middle of the street at night and doing something that they'd get arrested for. So we're loving them through that and helping them and giving them grace to do that. So that'd be a place that you could say, let's take you there, or this is a place that you could go to. We have limited amount of space, but because we've partnered with Providence and their generous help, then we're able to do that all the way through the 16th of March. So we'll have a place for that in regards to help after hours anyway. As far as calling in the middle of the night, it's not something that you could call and say, this is, do you have any openings? I can give you the phone number for that afterwards or get that to everybody. If you were to call 549-HOPE, which is a good number, that's easy to remember. It's going to go to our main line after hours, but it's also going to tell you the phone number for the day center so that you can call them and then they answer the phone and see if there's any. We've been pretty much averaging full space, 20 to 27 people every night, and it's first come, first serve. So there's a possibility, and that's an option for you.
Okay. And I think just a good kind of global answer as well is we're working really hard to continue to expand our coordinated entry front doors, but right now we have physical front doors, which are organizations like the YWCA and the Poverello Center, which anyone can walk into and enter the coordinated entry system and learn about all the resources that meet and match their needs. And we also have a virtual coordinated entry system front door through 211. And so 211 is always a great option, that number can be called 24 hours a day. And they're aware of all the resources in the community, and it's everyone at this table and in the audience service provider's job to make sure 211 has real-time, up-to-date knowledge of the services that we're providing. And so that's always a great resource for anyone in the community to call and to learn about what's available to a specific person at a specific point in time. I think our community, though, you'll hear more about it shortly, but we really are working in a very diligent way towards a permanent supportive housing plan for these individuals who are struggling with addiction and who are living on the streets and chronically homeless. And most permanent supportive housing programs also have some 24-hour-a-day response or an ability to do that assessment to support people in the moment. And so I do think that's an unmet need in our community that we need to keep working towards. But as we do that, we've got this kind of combination of places where you can physically go and then also a 24-hour-a-day virtual coordinated entry system as well.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I would just say the long term is we want to make sure that they're in coordinated entry so we can work on the housing piece, but realizing, yeah, the short term is just helping them survive and link to services.
Hi, my name is Tom Tard. I'm just a local citizen and have a lot of run-ins with and relationships with homeless people, and have a lot of guys have slept in their cars in front of my wood shop. For some reason, it's kind of a magnet for cars. But I had the same question as Heather. She stole it. So my other question was, what should I not do? What's the worst things I can do? Because I've done everything that you can think of to try to help different people. And just from your guys' expertise, like, what is perpetuating the problem as a community person, just somebody in the town?
That is the best question of the night. It's a great question. Will, do you have some feedback about what is the least helpful in terms of supporting people living on the street? I'm sure, Sheila, you've got some great feedback as well.
Don't punch them.
Okay, yeah.
I thought Sheila was going to take longer, but okay. Personally, I don't like to tell people what to do, but I don't love giving money to panhandlers. I know a lot of people in Missoula have big hearts, and they want to help in any way they can, and that's an easy way to help. But I think the reality is that in Missoula, people don't need to panhandle for basic services. They can get food at plenty of different places, clothing for free at the Bethel Community Church. I think there's a lot of community resources there for people who want to make a change and access the resources. I think panhandling normally, typically, in most situations, goes to feed an addiction. So that is one thing I wouldn't do. I don't do personally, and also because of professional boundaries. I think if you wanted to help someone who's panhandling, I always like to, we hand out socks on the hot team, but like having socks is nice. Everyone usually likes socks, wool socks in the winter, and regular ones in the summer. People usually don't like ankle biters. I don't know why. And food is helpful too, like jerky, granola bars, water, Gatorade. So if you have the urge to give money to a panhandler and you don't want to, those are some things that you can give instead.
And I'd also recommend calling the hot team, for example, and letting them know about this person. And we could also track and see if they're in coordinated entry, see where we're at in housing goals. Maybe we're trying to locate them because we have a housing voucher and you just told us where they're at. And so we can let them know, and that can help them get into housing quicker. So I think that communication process would be really helpful and letting us know, yeah.
I also think one of the biggest mistakes that we have made historically is giving people false hope and letting folks believe that there's going to be housing available. And for the vast majority of folks, we just don't have that. There are way more people that need housing than the housing stock that we have. Mm-hmm. So I think having a very honest conversation around those, the tough reality, and providing support in that moment to try to reconnect with any safe alternative is a really good route, rather than saying, I can help you by going to this front door, they're going to give you housing. Odds are that's not actually the reality.
Got it. Okay.
Just one other thing I would share again on the phone number 549-HOPE. So for us, we have someone that is passionate about helping people that way, and in our organization, we also have that touch in the Christian community. So to have that phone number when you have someone that's sleeping there on a continuous basis and you're not quite sure, and you've been helping them with these type of resources, to get them connected with that. We're going to do our own type of intake that's not necessarily coordinated entry, but we're going to listen to them and see what is it that you're dealing with. And we may say, are you in the coordinated entry system? I'm still surprised how many people I've run into that say, what's that? And I'm finding out it's someone that I know and I'm talking with, and they've got a job, but they're sleeping in their car, and so there's that we could help with because we're listening. And then also if it's something, I'm just trying to get back to California, then we can work on that as well in a different route in providing them hope instead of your driveway, so that there is an answer to it. And that's just a phone call where we won't necessarily have all the answers, but it's at least providing hope, and we're not pawning people off. And we're willing to take that as a central focus too, because then we know we can go to these organizations because we have that list. Well, we also have the list of those churches that are wanting to provide that type of support as well.
Okay, awesome.
And I would add, I would just add, one thing you can do too, Tom, which you and community members like you are doing, is not walk away from that situation sitting with that discomfort and then moving on, of figuring out how can you be involved and how can you support efforts around housing and homelessness in your community, stay engaged in the conversation and participate in the long-range plan to move folks beyond homelessness.
Yeah, and I think just understanding that homelessness is complex, and there's a lot of reasons behind the behavior that we're seeing. It's very traumatic, and it's not just what's wrong with you, what's happened to you, and really peeling back those layers and understanding why they might be using substances. And we also, just looking at the higher level system, we don't have enough treatment beds. We don't have enough housing. We don't have enough treatment. So if people want treatment today, we don't have it. And so there's a lot of pieces outside the homelessness system that is, beyond our control, that we all can work together in advocacy, legislative. We're giving you a lot. I hope that was okay.
I got it all right here.
Yeah, thank you.
No, that's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we talk about our next steps?
How do you get a hold of the hot team?
We operate a hotline. It's a cell phone that we operate usually 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and it's 493-7955.
Will you also talk about your drop-in times too?
I will, yeah. We do drop-in hours at the Missoula Public Library and the Missoula Food Bank. The food bank from 10 to 11 on Mondays, and the library from 3 to 4 on Thursdays. And so that's just a physical location for anyone who's looking to check their status in the coordinated entry system, or just to check in with the hot team. We are there as a physical location that's not in the Poverello Center.
I'm Taylor. I actually work for Tom, hence the same jacket and beard on the hat. But I may have missed it, but I don't know. You guys were talking about getting these people into housing. What does that housing look like? Is it with a host family? Is it with keeping in close contact with you guys? And then what are the biggest challenges moving forward? Because I know you've talked about how much limited resources you have with it, but are you considering doing more building and moving forward with that just for homeless, or what does that look like?
So we know at its base level that housing is the solution to homelessness, and so it really looking at it from a housing perspective, we need more housing of all levels, but especially multifamily rental housing, small units that can accommodate individuals when we're talking about chronic homelessness, and really larger units when we're talking about families. We have an extreme shortage of 3 to 4 bedroom apartments in Missoula, and that has a dramatic impact on the availability and the competitive nature of larger units for families. And so we know we need more housing at all levels, but we're also looking at other communities that are employing progressive models like small homes or tiny homes, room sharing, or sponsorship, lots of different models around room sharing between college individuals and aging populations, and there's a lot of synergy there in terms of homeless populations as well. And so we're really looking at it from all angles, but building more housing is a key component of that. Cool. Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome.
And I'll just kind of follow up on what Aaron was saying. For our families that we're serving, our greatest concern, I think, moving forward is the affordability of rentals. We're able to get families in, subsidize it for 12 months. And so right now we're trying to follow up on those families that we've been serving now for 12, 24 months and find out if they're able to stay housed. It's so hard to find those 2-3 bedroom units that they need that are under $1,000 because that's what they can afford, under $800. And so unless we have a good stock of that, I think that we may see in 2 years from now, 3 years from now, another spike in family homelessness as they roll off our rent assistance program.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
And I'll just add, we are collecting system-wide data to show us that we have X number of people that require a high-level intervention, but we only have X number of vouchers to serve that population. We're tracking how many people are self-resolving, for example, and so I think the system-level data that we're able to collect as well will help inform what kind of housing interventions that we need to meet the need.
All right, I think we will wrap up with Theresa sharing some of our next steps. Watch out for that mic.
I'm way more comfortable back there than I am up here. So looking ahead in our next year, as we're kind of wrapping up phase 2 this year, we're going to continue the system-wide collaboration. We're not going to stop that. So we're going to continue to work together as partners and also working outside in the mainstream resources as well. So we'll just continue to build that. And that also means statewide collaboration and working with institutions. So it's not just at the local level. So we'll continue that piece. We also know that this system that we have in place that we're continuing to build locally and statewide has also ended veteran homelessness in 60+ communities across the country. And the Housing and Urban Development actually has criteria and benchmarks. So you can go back and look through your data and say, okay, for 6 months, you've showed that your housing placement rate is greater than or equal to the number of people that are experiencing homelessness. So we are tracking all that data, so, and hopefully in the next maybe 2 years, I'm not sure how long it'll take us to get there, that we can show and say, hey, we've met functional zero for veterans, for chronic homelessness. So we have the system in place and we're collecting the data and we're going to keep working towards that. We've already talked about increasing the supply of permanent housing interventions, permanent supportive housing. We know that we need to continue to remove and address barriers in the system, not just at the local, but also at the statewide and federal level. So we're going to keep doing that as well. And then monitoring, tracking, and reporting system-wide outcomes. I get the tough, like City Club, I got the tough question of how many people are experiencing homelessness today, and I'm like, ooh, like that's a hard question to answer. We know it's a lot, and people are coming in and out of leaving the area, and it's hard to track, and we don't have enough staffing capacity to accurately track that information. But when we do have the system down and we're doing our best, we want to be transparent. We want to put that information out there. Seattle, for example, in King County, they put all of their coordinated entry stats that, the people that are coming into homelessness, their permanent housing rates, all on a website. And we'd love to do that and be transparent and let the community know where we're at and how much further ahead we have to go. So that's, another piece that we want to accomplish as well. So we're going to keep trucking along and really thankful for all, the panelists, for the community partners that showed up today as well. These guys have put in a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of effort. This has not been an easy ship to turn and to build and with this new system. So we're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep moving forward because we do believe that we can end homelessness, and we're really excited to get there. So thanks. And I did forget to mention, so I said this was a big week. So our point in time count is Thursday, and then we also have Project Community Connect, which is this Friday. We renamed it because we didn't want to be exclusive. We wanted to make sure that anyone in the community that needs support can come to the event and know about it. And that's also going to be at Zootown Church. So there's flyers out here. Make sure you spread the word, and hopefully you're volunteering at the event as well. So thank you.